until,
But I know I think you got the one, let's do it today, are we doing different?
I don't know if we're gonna do different or not by then.
Okay,
I don't know that it can be
Yeah.
done and voted upon by then.
okay.
Oh, the tourism fund, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Tracy sent them out.
Yeah, she-
Out because she
She
was like, well,
me today.
it's gotta be done by December
Right.
1st, so I better send this out. I go,
Yeah. I agree. I have it and I have changed some things, but I've been,
Gotcha.
and I thought.
I only know before I start filling it out, I'm like.
No, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Because I am changing it, but
Yeah.
when I say I mean,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
making changes so that we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
present it to the events
Yeah.
committee, and if they
No,
like to
just-
change. It's just so duplicated efforts. I mean, it has the same questions, actually, it didn't pull the same. And none of them come back to us looking the same.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great.
Thanks, everyone. Welcome to a regular meeting of the Goldendale City Council. Shelley, would you please take roll call?
Johnston,
Present.
Dale Wheeler,
Here.
Laura Meeker,
Present.
Ellie Casey, here, Andy Hall,
Here.
Danielle Covenant,
Here,
Mylan Walling.
Here.
Okay, great. We have a full council. We'll move on to the next item, public comment. First public comment is for agenda items. Is there anybody that would like to make a public comment on issues on our agenda today? Anybody on the line? No? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, and that's approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. We have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
I so move through this agenda and it's an agenda.
second,
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the agenda and the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
I,
Opposed? Okay, great. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And that is a presentation of our third quarter budget update by Sarah Kazmarek. And Sarah, are you on the line?
I'm here.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for joining us, and I'll go ahead and hand off this presentation to you now. Thank you.
Okay, great.
You do the host so you can share your screen.
All right. Can you see the third quarter review PowerPoint?
Yep.
Great. So this is the presentation for the third quarter review for the city of Goldendale. So for our revenues for the general fund, which is your main fund, the revenue collected so far is about 63% of the budget. This is compared to last year where you were about 68%. The actual revenue collected increased just under 2% from the prior year, and this is due to just that slight increase in property taxes and B&O taxes. So one of the comments last time when we did the quarter two report was that you wanted a little bit more detail on some of the things that used to say miscellaneous or other sources. So as we go through today, I'm just going to point out those items that have changed. So for the general fund down here, we have loan income, Bishop and Overdorf. So this is loan income. This used to say, I think, miscellaneous. And then we also have interest, lease, and restitution income, and that was other sources. So those are some things that have changed here for the general fund for just kind of how we have this presented. But like I said, overall, we're about where we were last year. We've brought in a little bit more income, only just that 2%. For the expenditure side for the general fund, the expenses are about 73% of the budget compared to 62, almost 63% last year at the same time. The actual expenses increased about 19% from the prior year, and this is due to increased costs associated with law enforcement and mostly the airport fuel system, which was a new budget item for 2025. So once again, on the expenditure side, we didn't really, I think the only change we had here was this interest, other transfer out. This used to be miscellaneous. So this is $303,000 and this is a transfer out. Part of that is for the transfer to streets and part of that was the transfer to parks, which we will see when we get to the revenue portion of those funds. But it was $162,000 to streets and $141,000 to parks. So other than that, like I said, it's 73% of your overall budget is what's been spent so far for the year in that category. So for the utility fund, you've collected about 72% of the budget compared to only about 39–40% last year. The revenue collected increased to about 3.5% from the prior year due to an increase in the charges for goods and services. And the big difference here is that last year you had budgeted $6.2 million for anticipated infrastructure grants and loans coming in. This year we only had 2.3 budgeted. So while you've received about the same amount between this time last year and this time this year, the biggest difference is that budget last year was much higher for what you anticipated to receive in for infrastructure grants and loans. On the expenditure side for the utility fund, the expenses were at about 84% versus 46%, which is where we were last year. So annual expenses increased about 3% from the prior year, mostly due to increase in principal and other debt service costs and a little bit for that water project. Kind of similar to the income side, on the expenditure side, the total last year for the budget was $8.6 million. It's only $4.9 million for 2025. So mostly that difference in that percentage is that last year, while you'd only spent about $4 million, that was out of an $8.6 million budget. You're at about $4.2 million this year, but the budget was only $4.9. Here, the only change that we had for kind of how we have this here, I think we just indicated more of the difference between principal and interest, but for the most part, these stayed the same for the descriptions. On the street fund, revenue collected was 34% versus 17% last year. And then the revenue collected increased a lot, 221% from the prior year. This is mostly because you had an increase in funds received from the county and all the funds that you received for the EV charging station. So when we look at that, you didn't have those categories budgeted last year. And then this year you did, which is why we have that increased budget. It was 2.4% for, I'm sorry, 2.4 million for 2025. It was only 1.5 million in 2024. And what we did kind of break out here that I talked about already is we're changing this from miscellaneous to saying operating transfers in. This is coming from the general fund. So that 162,000 was transferred over from the general fund into streets.
How do those transfers get decided?
Yeah, so usually what happens is about once a quarter, your team reaches out to whichever CPA is working with you and says, hey, we need to do transfers. Where are we? What does this fund look like? Because for parks and streets, sometimes you don't have enough income coming in, especially parks is pretty much all funded by transfers from the general fund. So we kind of analyze that fund throughout the year, and then once a quarter, we usually make a transfer. So for the street fund on the expense side, we're at about 65% of the budget compared to 32% expended at this point in time last year. And kind of in line with that 220, we're at 295% increase from the last year, and that's due to that chip seal project and the EV charging station. So that part of that for the percentage difference for the 64% versus the 31% is once again kind of this capital expenditures that you have associated with that chip seal and the EV charging station.
Question.
Yeah, Danielle has a question.
So I know we talked about it before, but I'm just curious with the chip seal or I mean, I'm sorry, with the EV charging station, that was supposed to be 100% refunded, correct?
At this point, you've received in 200 and I think 58,000. We're still waiting on that last 20,000. Sandy, am I missing anything on that?
No, I contacted them and they were waiting for one other invoice to send me. And so it is 100% funded.
Okay, so when that happens, can we put little notes like this was refunded to us? Because to me, when I look at expenditures, I mean, it looks to me like we have taken that out of our actual funds, not out of grants and things of that nature. Does that make sense to anyone else, or am I the only one that's looking at it funny like that?
I like it.
Well, there's an asterisk that says originally budgeted in GF, which I assume is grant funds.
That stands for general funds, because last year in the budget, when I noticed when I was putting this together, it was in the general fund, which was very confusing because it's actually in your system, in the street fund.
What page?
Bottom.
Oh, I see.
But a note like that that says it's
Yeah.
funded would be useful.
I think it would
We
be
can-
useful.
We can add a note that says if it's 100% grant funded or 87% grant
Because
funded.
especially for when we're doing the budget meetings, that's helpful because then we're not trying to figure out where to find that money. It's already been found. We don't have to worry about where it's going to, and then we already know without having to revisit those every time.
Sure.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. I've made a note of that for next time as well. So that now we're getting into kind of some of the other funds, which tend to be your smaller funds. So for the Parks and Rec, like I said, we made this change. So we're kind of being transparent about the fact that this is an operating transfer in from the general fund. So that was $141,000 for the year. So you're at 79% of the budget as of this quarter. The same time last year, you were at 75%. So very similar. For the Goldendale Housing Rehab Fund, this is because this is coming from interest income and principal income associated with those loans. 72% of the budget this year, we were about 45% of the budget last year at this point. And then for the Economic Development Fund, I clarified this to indicate that the revenue from this is coming in from lease income from the AM Todd and Incubator Buildings A and B. And that's pretty much your main source of revenue for the Economic Development Fund. You had last year in Q3 in 2024, you had some grants coming in to, I would assume, build that. But this year we only have that income from the lease itself. On the Public Safety Reserve Fund, you're at 98% of budgeted as of end of Q3. You were at 58% last year. We clarified that this is investment interest, so this used to say miscellaneous. We clarified that for the Capital Improvement Fund, that the income here is all coming from your real estate excise tax. And that in the criminal justice program, we're clarifying that the income here is coming from state entitlements, impact payments, and some taxes. For the Drug Enforcement and Investigation Fund 109, this says miscellaneous here. And that is from just some interest, and mostly fines and penalties is what's funding this fund. For the tourism fund, I don't think I had to change anything on here. I think I may have clarified that this is coming from interest on investments as well. And then for your agency suspense fund, these agency type deposits, that's court remittance and some building code fees. And then here on the expenditure side for some of these funds, I clarified that the capital outlay here is for playground equipment for the Parks and Rec Fund. No expenditures so far for the Goldendale Housing Rehab Fund. And then for the Economic Development Fund, you do have this small business innovation grant that was not budgeted there that we received. For the Public Safety Reserve Fund, you had some capital expenditures. You're at about 91% of the overall budget. Last year, you'd actually gone over at this point. So you're still within the budget right now. And then for the Capital Improvement Fund, we have here transfer out streets in case you have a transfer that you do. I know that for the budget, which we're going to talk about later tonight, we are anticipating having some transfers next year for 2026 out of the capital improvement fund to streets. Right now, we don't have that. And then for the Criminal Justice Program Fund 108, that's just some operating supplies, which is pretty minimal. For the Drug Enforcement Investigation Fund, you have just some canine expenses. And then for the Tourism Fund, I didn't have to clarify anything on that since you have this broken out already by your various programs. And then the non-expenditures down here for the agency suspense fund. This is a suspense fund, a fiduciary fund, which means you essentially bring in those court remittance fees and the building code fees, and then you act as a fiduciary and hand that along to the state. So that's what those expenditures are, is on the income side, you received those fees, held them in a fiduciary capacity, and now you've sent them to the state, which is what this expenditure is. One of the other comments we got last time was that we'd like to see the airport specifically broken out so you can see what's happening with the airport. So I'm going to start including this in our quarterly reports. And right now, the budget was $126,000 for the year. For revenue, we're at $97,000. So 77% for being 3/4 of the way through the year. So that's right about where we want to be. And then on the expenditure side, we had budgeted $169,000. We're at $129,000, right about at that 3/4 mark as well. So overall, we're at a deficit of about $32,000. So if you specifically look at the airport fuel sales, right, you had about $14,000 come in as income from the sale of fuel. And we only expended about $12,000 in the sale of in purchasing that fuel at this point. So those are kind of all of the reports I have for Q3. Does anyone have any questions?
These are so much easier to read. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, and I will make that change to try and indicate what's grant funded for expenditures next time as well.
Anybody else have any other questions about the, Steve, yes.
See down here, under construction, you got 33,000.
What page?
Airport,
Page you on?
the airport.
That was probably part of the airport fuel project. Because we still had a little bit of construction left over that we did for part of this year.
Okay.
So that's what that construction is, because we don't normally have a construction tab, because we don't do construction.
I didn't think so, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But also, you know, expenses 130,000.
Some of that, even the equipment, some of that had to do with the airport fuel projects. So next year, we won't have those types of things that's already constructed.
Is that coming out of the general fund?
Anything that has to do with the airport is general funded.
I thought we had some grants to support.
We got some grants to support a little bit of the airport, but part of that project did come out of the general fund. But normal liability insurance, property insurance, maintenance up there, the airport manager salary all comes out of the general fund.
No, and then professional services,
And it's where his fee comes out of,
oh, okay.
the airport manager, because he's not a full-time employee, so it's not under salaries. He owns hand.
Oh, yeah, Theon. You have your hand up, Theon?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So, I was wondering if there was any way to find out, what our revenues are for the citizens in town that own dogs, that have to register the dogs. I know that we do have a, ordinance that enforces them having to register their animal within city limits. But I was wondering if it's possible to find out how much is coming in from that particular revenue source, if that can be set aside somehow for animal control or to work with the county in their endeavors.
I can do a report that shows how much has come in. I think on an average, we have about 200 dog tags purchased. But I can let you know what the total is of dog tags taken in. And I can email it to all of you.
I see that we have the expenditure, for animal control, but I'm assuming that was the vet bills that the officers.
That's for our K-9 unit budget.
It's for the K-9 unit budget is what, chief, it's not for animal control.
Oh, I saw in expenditures on one of these animal control, and it was like $15,000. Is that?
You may be looking at the budget, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm jumping ahead then. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, Lauren.
Circling back to the airport topic, and I think a common thread here is people seeing expenses and not understanding how much of that is maybe coming out of general funds or tax revenues from the city versus grant funding. I don't have a solution, but I think we should look at some way to add a column and figure out a way to clearly define for city council and public, like how much of these line items are grant funded versus coming out of our general fund or other revenue sources would be really helpful as we evaluate these. And then also, so just a general comment there, but also just kind of curious about the construction for the airport and the professional services is a really low percentage. So I didn't know if that was maybe reflective of activities out there that are grant funded, and if there's activity to come this year, or did we come in under budget? What?
The professional services, because that's the airport manager, that wasn't a full year.
Oh, gotcha.
That's only been 6 months, which it does have to go to the council the next time to see if you want to continue with his services. That was part of the contract. So that was only a 6-month time frame, 5-month time frame, I think, as of right now.
And that'll be a topic of our budget committee meeting tomorrow.
Yes, and then it has to go back because that was an agreement for you guys to put on his manager's agreement.
Yeah.
Was that in 6 months, it has to go back to the budget committee for review and then back to the council for suggestion to continue or dissolve his contract or whatever you want to do. So that's going to have a meeting at that tomorrow.
And then 33,000 of the 114,000 budgeted for construction. Is there more activity going to happen out there this year?
No, it's all done.
We came in under budget.
Yeah, for the remainder of the project.
Slide 3, fines and penalties are really low compared to the budget, which actually that happened in 2024 as well. So maybe that's just an update we need to do on our page 3. Yeah.
Page 3.
Maybe that's just an update we need to do on our next budget, is to more accurately reflect our fines and penalties.
Yeah, I think you're talking about in the general fund for revenue here.
Yep. The $7,637. But I just realized, I was looking at this, that last year, 2024, we were at 43%. So we just are over allocating a little bit there.
Probably.
Yeah, so I think that in our budget, some of the budgets, because you can see that this was 30,000 for both 2024 and 2025. I think there was some just bringing that over from prior years. I know that this year for the budget, we did that a little bit differently. We looked at the historic data for what we had as income or expenditures, and then annualized that to bring that forward, which we can talk about when we get to the budget.
We did that on a few of them, Lauren, when it looked like it was the same numbers. We did the same thing with the economic development and a couple of the other areas where they had just been bringing the same number forward. And so that should be talked about more tomorrow, but that's been brought up. So hopefully we'll get it closer to correct this for the next year.
Okay.
Dialed in a little bit.
Yeah.
And then slide 17, it states the line item for a Coney Park improvement plan. That's just a general parks plan, Dave, that we've been working on, or is that something else specific to a Coney Park? Sorry, the third line item down at the top section on slide 17 there.
Right.
Yeah, I think that was part of that RCO grant that we're still working through for the Oconee Park improvement. Part of it that we already completed was the archaeological thing, but
Have we gotten results from that?
the archaeological.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all finished.
Is that reporting back to like the Public Works Committee, or should we have a Public Works Committee meeting to get an update on where we're at?
Yeah,
Cause I'll be honest, like, I kind of, yeah, where are we at with that improvement plan?
yeah, I sent out an
I
email.
hate to see just like consultants run with it and we don't have the input.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. I sent an email to all the Public Works committee members just earlier today. The plan's finished. We need to have one more meeting. And I sent an email to you, Steve and Theone, as well as our partners that have been working on that with us for suggested meeting times,
Okay.
so we can get that wrapped up.
I saw that, but I guess I thought that was for the, like a general, all over, it touches on everything for Parks and Rec for the city, but maybe that's a part of a component of this, a county specific.
Yeah.
park plan. Okay, thank you.
Part of it, but the meeting that we need to get is for our whole comprehensive parks plan.
That'll feed into this.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
Appreciate it.
And the other ASR component to that, we're still in the process of working on that one. Cause we have, I think we brought it up at a previous meeting, but we had some money left over after they did their initial parks design, and then we still have some left over, so Dustin is actually taking some of those projects and giving an amount to each of those projects. So, and that can be paid out of part of that grant as well. So that way, if a company comes in or somebody wants to do a project with the city, we already have, well, at Oconee Park, we have these projects and this is what it costs to do them.
Yeah.
So we're working on that one now.
Anybody else have any questions?
I just have one more, and it kind of
Yeah.
has to do with the parks and stuff, and then what we talked about before. So the Oconee Park Improvement Plan, I heard us just saying that was grant, part of the grant money was from that, right?
Yeah,
But again, it doesn't say on here that is grant.
Right, we didn't put that on those, but in the future, we'll put those.
Okay, that's all then. Thanks.
In the future, any of those that have grant funded, we'll add that line to it.
Perfect. Thank
yeah,
you.
that's a good idea.
Because then we're not worrying about if we're,
Over, right.
right.
Yeah.
So let's assess it better.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any information is better.
Okay, anybody else have any questions before we move on to the next item? Okay, well, we'll move on to the next item on presentations, and that's the 2026 budget review. And so we'll take it away with that one, Sarah. Thank you.
All right, so this is the proposed budget for 2026. And I realized when I was preparing this presentation that we had a couple of numbers that were not right, so I did correct that. So if we go through this, you're going to see the totals for some of them are not going to match what you have in your backup. I did send the corrected version to Sandy earlier today, right before we started, so she can send that out for you guys to look at later. But for the 2025 budget, overall, we do a 2% increase in expenditures across the board for inflation. For revenues, we reviewed a lot of those individually with the department heads, if it was specific projects, and if those needed to be adjusted. And then some of them we kept consistent with what we had from 2025. So we're being conservative for our revenue by keeping that the same for some prior revenue. And then our expenses we're assuming are going to increase. So we also incorporated in here the utilities increase for known rates for water and sewer, and that's both on the income side and on the expenditure side, as certain funds had expenditures related to water and sewer utilities. And then, of course, we have that 1% increase in the property levy tax. Not a lot of projects for 2026. We had a lot going on in 2025. So we're just going to wrap up that ASR water grant, and that's the main project that's going to finish up in 2026. This is assuming that a lot of the projects that you have going on right now are going to wrap up by the end of 2025. So we may have some of those kind of bleed over into 2026, but that's what we're budgeting for right now. So this 2026 summary is essentially a snapshot of what's happening with the city. And this, what we have for our balances up in this section here is what's rolling over from what we're assuming is going to happen through the end of 2025. There's this disclosure at the bottom that says this beginning fund balance is an estimate and will change based on what actually happens for this last quarter in 2025. But with our best estimate, that's what we're starting with as our fund balances. We have our expected revenues that we're going to go through here next, our expected expenses, and that leaves us with our expected ending 2026 fund balance, which is your cash. So your cash for each of the funds here is detailed out, and what's expected in this budget is that you're going to have about $4.1 million across the city for your funds. Most of that is going to be in the water and sewer, with the second highest going to be your general fund. The line down below is this surplus deficit, which is essentially in your budget. This is the change just in the year 2026. So we're anticipating, for example, an increase in the cash balance for the general fund of $73,771. That means the ending cash balance in total for your general fund is going to be this $706,128. So that means that for the whole city in its entirety, we're anticipating an overall gain in 2026 of just under $500,000, ending with this $4.1 million is the anticipated budget that we have here. So for our revenues for the current expense fund, I'm not going to go through all of these lines. I'm going to kind of go down to the bottom where we're saying that for the total general fund, the budget last year for 2025, we budgeted $3.9 million. We're anticipating just about $3.6 million this year. The difference here and why this has gone down is because you had last year, and this is on the revenue side, you had revenues anticipated coming in 2025 related to that airport construction. We don't have that for 2026. So you had some grants related to airport that you were not going to anticipate getting in 26. The expenditure side for your general fund is similar in that when we get down to the bottom of this, where we talk about the overall, is that the budget last year was higher. It was just under $4.1 million. This year it's $3.5 million. So like I said, a lot of that is because if we go back up here, we can see that you had budget for construction here, and this was related to the airport fuel system that we don't have anticipated in the budget for this upcoming year. We had some capital outlay that we were anticipating and some transfer to streets that we don't anticipate having this year in the budget. So those are kind of the main changes for the general fund. For the utility side, on the utility fund, last year you had $5.2 million, just about 5.3 for the budget for revenue. This year we only have 3.5 million. The difference there, like we've kind of talked about throughout, is that we had a lot more projects in 2025. So you had this sewer project and you had some upgrades that you were doing, that you had funds coming in from other sources that we don't anticipate having in 2026. And that's kind of the main difference. We're also on the payroll side, because you have less activity happening in the streets side. We're going to have more of the payroll from some of your employees that are across your funds. More of that's going to go to the utility, and we'll see that when we get to the expenditure side here next. For your water and sewer fund, on your budget for the expenditure side last year, it was that 5.9, almost $5 million. This year it's only 3.1. And once again, that's because last year you had, $1.7 million for professional services for this water project. You had 500,000 for the treatment plant improvements, and we don't have those anticipated expenses for this next year for 2026. That is assuming we have this column that says expected 2025, which is how we got to our beginning balances when we were looking at that snapshot and we said this is the cash we think you're going to have going into 2026. Part of how we got that was talking to department heads of, okay, do you think this project is going to wrap up in 2025? Or do you think some of it's going to happen in 2026? So that's why we have this column, and we're anticipating the rest of these projects wrapping up in 2025 at this point for the water and sewer fund. For the street fund, your budget last year for 2025 was just about 2.5 million. This year that's decreased quite a bit, and we're only anticipating about 381,000. And that's because we don't have this chip seal grant or the Darlin Street project. We're anticipating all of this wrapping up in 2025. And then most of what you have here is just your regular operations coming in, which is why the income here is from some permits and some sales tax, and then your shared income from state sources. And then we're also anticipating a transfer in from the Economic Development Fund of about 22,000 to break even for this fund, since this was one of the funds that your standard regular income does not cover your standard regular expenditures. On the expenditure side for the street fund, your total street fund here last year in 2025, and this was one of the ones I had to change, was 2.4 million. This year, like I said, this is the same number that we just saw, that 381,000, because we're breaking even on this fund with that transfer in from the general fund. And the main difference here again is that you have all of these projects that we're anticipating wrapping up in 2025 that are not going to happen in 2026. For your other funds, Parks is going down a little bit. It's holding fairly steady there. The main difference here is that you had some grants coming in last year on the revenue side. We're not anticipating that happening here in 2026. So more of the park fund is going to need to be covered by transfers in from the general fund. So we have 207,000 budgeted for that. For the Goldendale housing rehab program, that's staying just about the same. We actually went off of your expected 2025 amount rather than the budget last year, since that expected was higher than what we had budgeted last year. For the Economic Development Fund, the main difference here, the budget was 13,000 last year. This year it's 37,000, and that's because your incubator buildings and the Todd lease are actively being leased out, so you have income coming in from those sources this next year in 2026. For the Public Safety Reserve Fund, we have that budgeted a little bit higher. That's because while the income for this for the taxes is the same, we're also anticipating having some funds coming in for a DNR equipment grant. We got more in last year than we had budgeted, and we think we're going to get a little bit this year, which is why we have that included this year. For the Capital Improvement Fund, you usually get about 50,000 in for your real estate excise taxes. So we're assuming that's going to happen again next year. No change there. And for the criminal justice program, this is the same thing. We're anticipating about the same amount that you had the prior year coming in for that. For the drug enforcement fund, we're also anticipating that being more like what you received as actual amounts in 2025 rather than budgeted, because we were not keeping up with what was anticipated for the budget historically over the last couple of years. So we've changed to use historic actual figures that you've received in going forward. For the fund,
Sorry, Sarah, Danielle has a question there.
Sorry about that. Back on the bottom of page 35 with the criminal justice project, that is, I just want to clarify, that is not budgeting for the fact that we might pass that tax, correct?
Correct. Yeah, this is,
It's assuming we will not get it, right? So if we
Yes.
do, that's just a bonus.
correct. Yeah, we didn't want to budget that because we didn't want to,
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
So for the tourism fund, this is mostly funded by your hotel, motel, lodging taxes. So you've fluctuated a lot with throughout the years with actual versus budgeted versus expected. So we were just basing this to be conservative off of what it looked like your actual was going to be for 2025. And so that's why the budget last year was higher than what we actually have this year, is because we're basing that off of what it actually looked like you were going to be receiving in, so that we could be conservative on the estimate for the income coming in for that fund. When we look on the expenditure side for these other funds, Parks and Rec, like I said, we are anticipating a little bit less of the expenditure, partially because you didn't have those grant funds coming in for next year. So what we have right now is just what we know is going to be happening for some of the changes. We do have a little bit of capital improvements here, and then mostly it's just salaries and wages and general operating expenses. And then, as I mentioned, most of this is funded by the general fund. For the Economic Development Fund, this is mostly coming as transfer to streets is where this expenditure is going, because right now you have all this income coming in from your incubator A and B building and the Todd lease, and you don't really have anticipated expenditures. So the main use of these funds is going to be transferring to cover the streets so that we can break even on the streets fund. For Public Safety Reserve, last year this was budgeted at 180. Next year we're budgeting at 204,000, and a lot of that is a change for capital expenditures associated with some police vehicle purchases and for some fire department equipment. We don't actually have a budget for expenditures for the capital improvement fund at this point. We're going to let that build up and hopefully use that for some matching funds for your TIB grants for future years. So right now we don't have any anticipated expenditures for the capital improvement fund. For the criminal justice program, that's just some operating supplies, and we're going off of kind of what it actually was last year. So minimal change there. Similarly, for the drug enforcement investigation fund, really minimal expenditures just based off of office and operating supplies. Tourism fund, that's based off of what actually happened last year rather than the budget from last year, since that was a lot lower than what it was actually budgeted to spend. And then the next steps for here are any further refinement to budget numbers as we get feedback. And then the public hearing is set for November 17th. And then we need to pass the budget. So does anybody have any questions about the budget?
Mayor,
Yeah.
on the streets, we didn't get any, we're not expecting any TIP funds.
We didn't do a TIB project because we lost some of our funding from the county for our match.
Yeah,
And the matches are usually between $50,000 and $100,000. And so because we lost that, we weren't really sure where we were going to get those funds. We did not apply for a TIB for this year. So we're gonna have the one fund where we can maybe use for TIB matches. And we'll apply for TIB maybe every other year. That way we can utilize those funds because there'll be enough in that fund to cover that TIB matching funds.
yeah,
So we
Okay.
didn't do one this year.
yeah, okay, yeah, thank
For
you.
26.
Yeah, thanks.
So that's coming from this capital improvement fund 107. And so you're bringing in about 50,000 a year from your real estate excise taxes, and we're not spending anything here in 2026. So we're hoping to build that up to be able to use those funds to match in the future.
Anybody else? Oh, yeah, Lauren.
Under streets, page 30, operating supplies. Looks like the actual in 2024 was 800, our budget for 25 was 3,000. Our budget for 26 is $23.79. I know we did have conversations in council meetings this past year about making sure we have a line item to cover roadside weed control, and there was a pending discussion for Public Works to talk about that roadside weed control on some of these main thoroughfares, but $23.79, if that's where herbicide purchases would go, it's not gonna cut it. So I'm just kind of curious about, one, that the budget's all over the place over the years, and maybe we don't know the specifics of that exact line item, but I know that the budget committee was tasked with making sure we had funds for roadside weed control. I don't know where that would fall. Maybe that's further discussion at a future meeting, but I just want to make sure we follow through on that discussion from a previous council meeting. So probably it's too far in the details for picking out right now, but make sure that we get that in there as we have agreed to. Similarly, on slide 34, I don't know, I'm gonna look at 34, 38, or 30. Steve, we had talked about increased budget and for maintenance for Parks and Rec to make sure we're taking care of our city parks. And whatever slide it's on, it actually looks like we're trending downwards in that Parks and Rec budget.
That wasn't brought up at our last budget meeting, that I recall.
No, it was during the regular council meeting put out for the budget committee to consider when it got to that time. So
You said page 36.
let me see, 34, Parks and Rec, 34. No, that's not it. I had a couple notes here, but
34 is Parks Executive.
is that our expense?
If you're looking for expenditures, you're looking at page 38.
Oh,
38, thank you. So it looks like our salaries are trending downward from the previous budget, although maybe we aren't gonna hit our expected budget expenditures for 2025. I know we had a conversation here in council way ahead of the budgeting process to kind of bookmark this for, we want to have a line item in our Parks and Rec budget to improve our maintenance in our parks. So I'm not sure exactly where that would fall out in this budget, but I want to make sure that we do have that highlighted and we have that conversation and make sure that that happens. We didn't really name a number. So if you recall the discussion, we didn't say like 10-20% increase, but we did bookmark that as a talking point. So
Yes, we did.
I don't know which line item that would be, and again, it's probably getting down in the details, something that maybe Mayor Jones and Sandy can look into and come back to us with.
So you're saying for two separate things, one for the weeds for the sides of the roadside, and then, and to come out from the street funds, yes?
Wherever that would fall appropriately within the.
Okay, and then the second would be the, just to make sure I'm understanding you correctly,
Funding for Parks and Recs maintenance.
for
At a
just
higher level than what we've
upkeep
done.
or, because you talked about the employee salaries and wages, so are you talking in that area also?
Yeah, it would probably be there, and it'd probably also fall under repair and maintenance, which is.
Yeah, I was looking at that one and that totally,
Repair maintenance is only if we do outside repair to like hire somebody to do something.
Okay.
That's that repair maintenance. If it's just like buying supplies, it's the supplies one.
Operating supplies?
Yes.
Okay.
I know
and
that's kind of a,
Yeah, so our
Yeah, but
actual, if we look at our actuals, we're looking at quite a cut in our operating supplies for Parks and Rec when we talked about an actual increase. So I would still like to see that increase. Steve, we talked about this quite a bit.
Yes.
in 2025, it was budgeted 152,000. And then budgeted for 2026, 186,000. Am I reading that part right?
yeah, just the overall budget, not just the particular line item, but the overall budget.
Well, we're looking at different things, because I see operating supplies for 24 is 16.
you said at the bottom, the total general parks.
Oh, yeah, I was looking at the individual line items.
Oh, okay. Sarah, did you say something there?
No, I was just stating that was correct. That's for the total general parks. I did want to point out that Parks is one of your funds that is pretty much only funded from your general fund. So when you talk about having extra kind of budget line items to support some of those things you're looking at, what you're really talking about is transferring more money from your general fund to your parks. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that brings me back to slide 1. Where was that first summary page? Slide 4. Where are those ARPA funds sitting on slide 4, 2026 summary? Or
All right, so I think this is the page that you're talking about on slide 4, which is the summary. And your question is, where are the ARPA funds? And in answer to that, you have those kind of spread throughout. But mostly what that is that you use the ARPA funding to support salaries for police and fire, and we're able to kind of accrue and save the funds that you weren't spending on that because you were spending it on police and fire for salaries. So I don't like calling those ARPA funds because they're not ARPA anymore because there's a lot of restrictions on that. You basically used ARPA in lieu of unrestricted funds, so you've built up more unrestricted funds in your city.
Well,
So
the funds that came from ARPA at the council's decision and the mayor at the time's direction to save funds to be able to do a project that benefits the community, as those funds came out of federal dollars that were to offset impacts from COVID, and they're supposed to be community benefits. So I guess we need to find another way to refer to them, but we're not going to lose track of them.
Well, not only that, is the strategy with the last administration was that we would use those funds, roughly $1 million, to offset law enforcement and fire protection, which alleviated the pressure on the general fund to the same amount of money.
Yeah.
Which to me says $1 million should be in the general fund somewhere for our discretion. That was the strategy.
And
Has that changed?
If it just gets absorbed and goes away, then we failed at budgeting and managing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
that was not in a slide, but if you can look at what I have up here, this is talking about that carryover reserve is what I've been referring to that as. But essentially, this is the amount that you have that is related to your what used to be the ARPA funds. So you still have that, and we are still tracking that. And what we're essentially showing here is these funds make up your general fund when it's all rolled up, when we report that for end of the year financial statement reporting purposes. And then of those funds here, so drug enforcement, public safety reserve, your economic development, the housing, parks and rec, and your general fund, that's where those funds are kind of spread across. So you do have $979,000 from that kind of carryover reserve, and it's split across those funds right now. And that's because those are the funds that all get rolled up into the general fund when we present that on your end of the year financial statements. So while you have split them out, and some of those are managerial funds, from a financial statement reporting perspective, that is all part of the general fund.
Well, back to parks. General fund supports the parks, with the exception of some pocket change that we collect when we rent it out once in a while.
And grants that we might get sometimes, yeah.
That we might get. I know there's also been discussion about capital improvements within the fund that have to be funded. And again, there's this 900 and some thousand being spread out, and it's not going to in the directions that Lauren has just suggested that was the intention, even if it was a general intention. Now, the ARPA funds have restrictions. They keep changing the restrictions, and at this point, I question the restrictions, to be honest with you. If we get creative, which I think we have already, but I hope we haven't dug ourselves into a hole or mishandled.
Now they're not ARPA, so there aren't restrictions. She's saying that it was
Yeah.
already paid out using the ARPA funds, and that money that we saved from taking out of the general fund to pay the police officers in the fire department, that is the 900 and
Correct, yeah, 979,000.
so that's
Which is
that's
the
not
total.
restricted. That's just
That
general
Goes into
funded.
general fund
Correct.
without restrictions.
Correct. So we have not tied our hands.
Well, okay, then how come we're begging for money for something like capital improvements in our parks? That's what I'm asking, budget committee.
What are the improvements? What is the breakdown of what you need?
We have already floated some ideas. And we will continue to keep those on deck. So.
Was that 2 years ago? How, because I this is the first time hearing about it other than the weed control. Yes, that was talked about. I don't remember any of the improvements because we've been
Yeah,
waiting
but,
on the parks.
A few months ago, it's queued up for Public Works Committee to identify some opportunities.
Absolutely.
Was it brought to a
But it
council
needs to
meeting
be,
though?
make sure that we understand that those funds are there and it's not just padding everything else to be transferred out other places.
Sure. Well, what I would suggest then, because like I said, and maybe, I mean, I think I pay attention usually to these meetings, but I don't recall ever anything line itemed from the Parks and Rec people, or our councils asking the budget to try to put this much towards any specific thing.
It hasn't gone any further than committee discussion.
Than the Parks and Rec committee?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well,
But it's been a council, but it's just not, we haven't identified specific projects yet.
okay.
We had some specific projects identified in our comprehensive parks plan. You mentioned one of them, the covered picnic area.
Mhm.
There was a few others, handicap accessibility to get out to the gazebo. There was about 4 or 5 of them. That's the ones that we were talking about earlier, that we still have money remaining in that RCO grant. We've taken those projects, the ones you mentioned and a couple others. We've turned them into our engineer to give us, we talked about it before, to give us engineered estimates on what those projects will cost. We'll have those in hand, and then when our comprehensive parks plans finished up at the end of this year, we'll have those projects in hand with estimates on how much they'll cost to do. That way we can make decisions from there, whether we apply for grant funding for those, different community agreements that we might be having with big corporations that are coming in that we do. That's how we, for instance, got some of that money for that playground equipment. So that's what's in the works for those projects that we've identified so far in that comprehensive parks plan.
Okay, so any movement forward pretty much hinges on completing our comprehensive plan
Yes,
and getting these estimates.
yes.
Okay, well.
I don't think there's any expectation of a line item for a use for those, but there certainly is an expectation that the idea, the intention doesn't just go away and those funds just get absorbed.
Maybe
to pad the
with,
budget.
yeah, because I didn't know that she had that little spot in there for that either, that's what it was for. I'm thinking maybe for all of our simplicity's sake, right next to where you have that, just put old.
Well, it's not in the budget, it's just on an Excel spreadsheet somewhere, so we
Right.
should be tracking it.
Yeah, maybe we could, in a parentheses somewhere, just say this is in the general fund, but it is bookmarked for,
Unassigned.
yeah, unassigned or something like that. But what it was for. The ARPA, I know you don't want to use the word ARPA in there. Can you use that in the actual budget? It used to be ARPA fund or payback for ARPA funds? Or is that tying our hands, Sarah?
We can call that kind of whatever you want to do. We just need to make sure. I'm slightly uncomfortable with the ARPA thing just because the auditors are going to say, "Hey, I thought you spent all your ARPA funds." So carry over reserve, committed capital improvement, whatever you want to use that for. One of the ways you could distinguish this is right now, like I said, it's in these mixtures of funds. it sounds like the intention is to kind of support capital improvements. You might want to consider transferring it to your actual capital improvement fund, which is not rolled up as part of your general fund. If you wanted to do that right now, like I said, it is kind of rolled up in this general fund right now. So of these funds, you only really have 433 that is not from that carryover reserve that you save from using your restricted ARPA funds. So part of that is if we look at it in that capacity, you know, where's your money here? It's in your general fund and your public safety reserve and your economic development is really where those funds are right now. So if you wanted to break that out and distinguish it in some way, either we would need to have maybe a line item somewhere. Part of it is it's kind of a reserve. It's not an expense and it's not a revenue, which is why it doesn't really show up in your budget. So unless you put it in your budget as either as an expenditure, it's kind of just sitting there in your fund balance here. So you could move it to your capital improvement fund if that's what it looks like you're going to spend those funds on.
Would that restrict us though? Would it restrict us in the general fund more than it restricts us in the capital improvement fund or vice versa?
Yeah, so your capital improvement fund right now is pretty much all your real estate excise taxes, and that does have restrictions on what you can use it for. It would be difficult to move the funds in there because you'd have to then track separately your two different sources of revenue because your REIT funds are restricted. These funds are unrestricted.
So would you suggest us just keeping it then in the general fund, but just kind of, like you said, have an asterisk that way we don't tie our hands and get the two different funds confused?
I would suggest keeping it in your general fund and your kind of mixture of those, and might also suggest when we do our quarterly reports, maybe in addition to that airport slide we have, maybe we do one where we're tracking our carryover reserve. And maybe think about what you want to call that. But we could do that and track that and show that of, you know, this is your mixture of your general fund. This is what's your, it's just going to be a balance until you spend it, essentially. Because it's not really an expenditure. It's not an income, which is why it's not really showing up in your budget. I can see where the concern is that it's going to get lost. It looks like from last year to this year, probably some of it was eaten up in the sense that your general fund is lower than it was 2 years ago. So I think that you probably do need to break it out and monitor that in some way. Otherwise, it is slowly going to get eaten up by some of your other expenses.
So would you like it on a separate slide like we do airport?
Yes, please.
Okay.
But I would suggest to keep it in the general fund area because if not, like she said, it would clash with the real estate excise tax and we don't want to confuse those two when we're trying to spend that money.
Good point, yeah.
Is the current expense 001 what we're calling general fund?
That is the general fund.
Okay, and its ending balance is expected to be 700,000 at the end of
Yes.
2026. Okay. But we have
With
the 979,000 that should be in there somewhere.
In there somewhere.
So your ARPA funds are in your general fund. And the reason we use either the current expense or the general fund is because when we report your financial statements at the end of the year to SAO, which is the state auditor's office, we roll up managerial funds into your general fund. So it's actually a combination of Drug Enforcement Fund 109, Public Safety Reserve 106, Economic Development 105, Goldendale Housing 104, Parks and Rec 103, and then your current expense 001. So all of those get rolled up into the general fund, which is where those carryover reserves that used to be the ARPA are right now. So it's 1.4 million with all of those funds combined. And then of that, you have 979,000. That's that carryover reserve.
Leon, do you have your hand up there? Theon, is that your hand up? Did you have a comment or question?
Yes, sorry, technical difficulties here. Yeah, I just wanted to, talking about breaking things up, about revenues, if we could get a little bit of a better idea, and we can talk about this more tomorrow in the budget meeting, but a better idea of how much we're receiving through the fees that we charge for certain things, because I think it's all wrapped up into just one other fees and services or something. Is that correct?
Fees for what?
I'm sorry, talking about the dog control again, or the animal control situation.
So no, it depends on what the fees are for. Everything that we receive, so like dog tags, those are gonna go into a bars number for dog tags, and I think it goes in the police department budget. But then the canine stuff is a completely different, what they call a bars number. It's like an account number. So every expense that we have, depending on what it is, goes through each department. So if it's water fees or water income, that goes in the water department. If it's sewer, it goes in the sewer department. So they're all broken down. So if you're talking about dog tags specifically, then that does go into a particular number, which we have that track. So I can tell you so I can email that to you.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering how it was broken up, and I know the city, for like business licenses and then dog tags, and then I see that it's broken up for like, how much we were paid from people for being vendors and things like that, but we don't have like how many people pay, what the revenue was from other services that we charge for the city. I would like to be able to see more of an itemized, so thank you. I appreciate that. And I think everybody else would too. It'd give us a better idea. And when it comes to the use of those funds, I understand, it was going through the police department, but we need to do something. I just feel like it's really important right now at this time, especially with people getting bit. I mean, are we liable for that? If somebody comes to our town and they're not from here and they get bit by a rabid dog, and just like, is there some recourse for that? Are we insured for that? There's a lot of questions there, but I know we have to do something. So I just would really hope that even if it's just taking the revenue that we're getting from dog tags to try to mitigate the situation that our city has right now with animal control. I understand that's completely separate from the canine officer and the vet bills and all that. Yes, I understand that completely. But I don't think we have a fund for that. And, kind of like what Lauren was saying earlier, why are we begging for money for certain things for capital improvement? Why are we begging for money to help, reinstate an animal control officer for our town? We shouldn't be struggling right now for something like that. So
the dog tags fee is about, I think we get around, I'm estimating, I have to look exactly, about $2,000 a year. Because we only have about 200 people that get dog tags. I know there's more dogs than that in town, but only about 200 people get the actual tag, which is about $2,000.
On page 5, that is the animal licenses, and it is $1,902 is what you got last year.
Good estimate.
Good estimate. Great.
He's rich.
So, and as far as like a dog bite, I know the officers do respond to dog bite calls or dangerous dog calls. So.
Dog owners are responsible for their own dogs, not the city.
Yeah.
So.
We're responsible for Harley. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Steve?
I would like to keep it on the front burner too, as far as allocating resources for, I don't know if anybody feels like we should have a public works meeting to address this. But the dry vegetation along some of the streets and around some of the places in town, as far as allocating some kind of resources to address that. I know there is I'd like to say gray area, but it's probably not gray, concerning the right of way. Now, I know legislatively and by ordinance, the property owner is responsible for the curb. But we're not seeing much cooperation. Either in enforcing it or dealing with it. But it is critical. It's a critical situation. I feel we've just been real lucky. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
That is on our to-do list for Public Works. We had a great conversation about it during our last ordinance committee meeting.
Yeah.
And you and I can chat and I can catch up on that.
Okay.
But we should talk about it.
Yeah.
Next.
Either amend the ordinance to better serve the situation, and the city become more of a player, allocate some resources to get it done. And it might even be applicable to this critical area thing that they are crammed down our throat here, because you've got that entire floodplain down there that is dry grass. So I don't know how that would apply, but anyway, just wanted
Yeah,
to mention that to you.
appreciate it.
Okay, great, thank you for it.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? I don't think so. Anything else, Sarah?
Nope, that's all I had.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your work on that. Appreciate it.
Yep, sounds good. Well, I will see you all on the 17th then for the levy discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, well, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, department reports. And we'll start over here with Fire Chief Noah Holm.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to give you an update on the calls. So we have had 163 calls for service this year. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you, Noah. Police Chief Mike Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we've had calls to service this year. We've had 3,152. Last year, our total calls were 3,278. So we're within the 126 calls of breaking last year's record. We still have 2 months to go. The month of October, we had 322 calls. We're actually down from the month before, which was kind of nice, but we had 7 arrests, 11 thefts. So our thefts are up a little bit higher right now, for petty theft. So we're just kind of trying to keep control of that. We've got new stop signs in on Roosevelt and Collins. We've heard no complaints about that. So it's been really good. They light up really well. They're very noticeable. They've slowed traffic down coming into the school zone. So they're doing exactly what we intended them to do. So very pleased with that. We are having an issue with the flock camera system in the World War II park. I just got an email from them. The PUD their legal team is stuck on a verbiage. Flock is stuck on their verbiage. So the PUD is not allowing us to hook up to their power at this time. So we may have to find a different pole. They have a legal battle saying they want, if any flaw happens from the flock cameras, that Flock's totally responsible for the PUD side. And so if there's backflow of power, there's some technical stuff way past my expertise. And so we're either gonna have to relocate the camera World War II park or think of a different solution, maybe do a different, maybe a license plate reader instead of that camera on a different side of town. So I'm still in discussions with Flock, so keep you up to date. As I know, or we may do 2 cameras at the park, depending on what the Parks project comes down to, how we want to revamp some of those, that we do covered areas that may hinder some of the camera views. So we may change something around there. So there's a bunch of different ideas that we can come up with. So I'm working with Flock on that. So as soon as I know something, I'll pass it on. So.
And it's just an issue with getting power to Flock system.
Well, it is. It's attached to their poles, because the PUD owns the pole in World War II park. We own the pole at Econia Park.
So we may have to install a pole at the World War II park and get power put to it.
That's
Right, that's a good reason, that's a good
possibility.
use of those funds.
That'd be great. I'm not sure what the cost of finance that'd be, you know, it's definitely not cheap, so it's kind of up to you
I
guys.
sure would hope the PUD would be
direction?
understanding that we're trying to improve public safety and try and work with us on
You,
this.
you would think, they've done other things, but when it comes to polls and liabilities and attorneys, like I
Yeah,
said, that's
no,
out of my realm of expertise, so
That's understandable.
we're just trying to make it safer in the parks for the public, so.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Andy.
Andy, you're first.
So Mike, I know I've already had a conversation with you, but, and not to, I should have talked to you before this, but can you explain to everyone how like animal control calls work right now, since we don't have animal control? Just so people know that they are being handled, and I know it's Facebook, but you know, there have been comments made and I've gone on there and stated, you know, that just my own opinion, I made it clear I wasn't speaking for everyone, but there's people that actually think that the city council doesn't care about animal control. I know that's not the case. And I know that we've all had discussions over this year, last year and everything. But if you could explain a little bit about how animal control calls are handled,
Yeah.
like with dog bites too, that would be awesome.
You know, I think there's a big misunderstanding about the animal shelter versus animal control. In the past, the Golden Police Department was in charge of animal control. We've sent people to the academy to get certified in animal control through CJTC, through the state. There's a certification with that. We turned that over to Public Works and the bill inspector at the time. They merged those two together. That didn't work out like it probably should have. There's not enough time for both, budgetary wise and workload wise. And so the police department this time, we do handle dog complaints. We go to every dog call that we get called to, whether it's a barking dog, whether it's a loose dog, whether it's a dog bite, vicious dog. As of right now, the officers will show up on a loose dog if it's not dangerous. If it's just running loose, we try and get it back to the owner. If it has tags, a chip, some way for us to identify it, we will contact the owner. If not, we're shooing it home, getting it out of people's yards. Vicious dogs, we just had 2 vicious dogs actually kind of chase a lady to her yard. Those dogs were impounded, taken to Carl the vet, on Broadway. Those dogs were signed over and declared dangerous and put down. And that's right now at the expense of the city. It is not cheap. It's, you know, that comes out of my budget, which I don't have room in my budget right now to continue dealing with that. But that's something we do. We respond to the hospital for if somebody is bit, there's forms that we fill out, we document it, things like that. And so we take every call that we can, and that's why we're up on calls for a lot of things for animal calls. And so
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Danielle, you.
I was just gonna ask about those 7 arrests. Are these repeat offenders? Is it the same person getting arrested a few different times?
some are pretty new. We get a variety, depends on the week or the month.
Are they local people?
Some are local, some are from out of town, depending on the events that we have. When we have more events in, we get a lot more out of town people.
Okay.
And so this was kind of Halloween weekend, so it was pretty busy. When Halloween's on a weekend, there's a lot of things going on that are not always friendly. We like to, unfortunately this year, the trunk or treat was not on the same weekend as Halloween. So that it was good to spread out the trunk or treat, but for law enforcement wise, we get a lot more people out late at night on Friday night for Halloween than we normally would, so.
Good, Steve.
Yeah, the repeat offender issue, that is interesting for sure and notable. Law enforcement has nothing to do about repeat offenders. They arrest them, they go through the system. It's the court system that you have to deal with as far as the repeat offenders.
Agreed, and I think that a lot of people don't realize that. They think that it's on the police officers when it's actually not.
No, it's the court system, it's the judicial system for the police.
And we don't always charge, I mean, we're not the ones that actually finalize the charge. They said comes from the prosecutors. And so-
Right.
And that's one of the things with, you know, even with our jail budget, that is increasing. We're in negotiations with that right now it's not gonna stay as cheap as we've had in the past, so.
Also, the two animals that you kind of have put down, apparently you weren't able to find the owners.
No, we found the owners, we cited the owners, and we declared them dangerous. They signed over the dogs to us. And we immediately put them down because it's cheaper for us to put them down than it is to house them when they're dangerous.
So how about the expenses involved here? That animal belonged to somebody.
Yep.
That person has to have some personal liability.
They have for all the citations we've given for the loose dog and those charges, but to put the dog down, we are the ones putting the dog down, not them. And so,
And if we made them responsible and had to pay for that, they may not hand the dog over, the minute it doesn't get put
True.
down, and then there's still a public safety risk, so.
Well, hopefully you'll refine them enough to cover the cost.
yeah, it's never, I mean, it never covers the cost. I mean, because the state gets their share of citations, so it's one of those things. That's why law enforcement doesn't make the city money, unfortunately. I wish it did. We'd have a lot more equipment and availability of different things we could do for that. And that's why we're kind of hoping that the citizens pass a levy for the increase on the tax for law enforcement and fire department to kind of help that budget out, because it's not cheap, and so.
So get a way to share that expense with tourists and businesses from out of town that are operating or coming to visit, so it's not just the local community paying that expense.
Yeah, people understand that when we have events, you know, we love having events at Goldendale, but what that does for the police department, that stretches my resources out dramatically, because we get involved, we're the security, we're the people leading parades, we're blocking streets off, we're, you know, have more officers out at one time, and so right now with being short-staffed this last year, overtime is over, and so
It makes sense to share that expense with everybody, not just the residents of the town.
Certainly.
You're getting put on the spot tonight, Mike. Mayor, I have another question.
Sorry, Mike.
You have another question?
Yes, I heard about a auto theft recently in town, and I was surprised. How many auto thefts happen annually? Is that zero typically, or are there?
there's quite a few. People
Really?
leave their cars, their keys in the car, they leave their cars running, they're irresponsible auto thefts, a lot of them, and so it happens quite often. It's probably, you can see this,
Okay.
still cars, that's why with the flock system, we got that, you know, deter that for one, for to be able to track down where they're going. And so unfortunately, we probably get 2 a month.
Really? I would have never guessed it. Thank you, Chief Smith. Huh.
Anything else, chief?
Nope, that's all I got.
Okay, thanks. City Administrator Sandy Wells.
So on the November 17th, council will have a public hearing for revenue sources, which is our tax levy. And then we'll also have a public hearing on the 2026 budget. So on the next one will be the first reading of the budget and a public hearing on the budget. And then I contacted the 2 companies for the appraisal review, for the appraisal of the airport property. They're supposed to get back to me this week for a quote, and then I will bring that back to you next council meeting, if as long as I get it. Yes.
How is that relative to that information?
So we did the appraisal, and then Lauren brought up that they could also do an appraisal review. So reviewing that appraisal that we got, I sent that to 2 companies that I was sent, and then
Oh,
they're gonna review it and then give me a quote to let me know how much that appraisal review it would cost. And so I'll bring that back to you to decide if that's what
okay,
an avenue you wanna go towards.
okay.
And then we have a budget committee meeting tomorrow at 6. And anything else from you, Sandy?
No.
Okay, the one other thing I'd like to get scheduled is Public Works Parks Plan Committee. I mentioned it earlier. And Lauren, Steve, and Theone are on that committee. I'd like to, if we can get that nailed down, I've already reached out to, I sent the email to everybody. It looks like November 5th or 6th at 5:30 PM. If we could, Theone, you already said that either of those dates work for you in the email. November 5th or 6th, that's Wednesday or Thursday of this week, if that works for you guys. At 5:30 PM.
Maybe Wednesday?
I'm pretty flexible. Yeah, busy.
I hope I'm not working. I think that's it works.
Okay, well, you can, if not, you can, let me know.
So right now it's November 5th at 5:30, Public Works meeting, Public Works Parks meeting.
And that's just to get that comprehensive parks plan finalized. We'll find out what the next steps are to finish that up. I think we'll have to have a public hearing about it to finish it up, bring it to the full city council for approval, but I chatted with Keaton Curtis from the Economic Development Office, who's been working on that, and he says it's all done, ready to go. He's already consulted with RCO to make sure, and everything's looking good with it. We just need to get it finalized, and so yeah, we'll pencil that in for November 5th, Wednesday at 5:30. I'll Keaton, Lori, Anderson from the Parks District have already said that's good with them, and so we'll get that.
Mike Villamar.
Mike Villamar, yeah, we've been working on that for a long time. It'll be nice to get that wrapped up.
Can we talk about two other topics, depending on how long the parks meeting goes? Parks meetings have gone hour and a half.
Yeah.
But if we're less than an hour, maybe we can talk all about the weed control and
Sure.
acquisitions. I can't remember what we're calling it in fun, but
If it's too long, do you want to possibly set one up for Thursday too?
no, I would like.
Try it.
I'm trying to elk hunting this week, do all I can, so I can do the following week.
Okay.
Well, and we could do a public works meeting to address some of this. Items too.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, this is a parks meeting, it's not a public works meeting.
Well, you're in the committee of public works / parks.
Yeah,
right.
But this meeting specifically, we're inviting our partners that we've been working on for this last couple of years on that comprehensive parks plan to join us and get that wrapped up.
I'll bring my work phone and we can schedule the following week. for
Okay.
Public works, that sounds.
Okay. All right.
That's what I was thinking. Okay.
Okay, great. And did you have anything else, Sandy?
No.
Okay, well, then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's council business. You might remember on October 20th, council meeting, the council requested to add council attendance to the agenda. We listed a couple RCWs. We had some questions posed to staff of what the rules are. Listed here are the current RCW. And we were asked to contact our attorney to see if the council procedure could be changed, and the attorney said that yes, that's up to the council entirely. And so from there, I'll hand this off to Danielle Clevidence for presentation.
All right, thanks, Mayor. So yes, so this has been brought up, I think either 3 or 4 different meetings we've brought up looking into it. So what I ended up doing once the RCWs were sent out and I saw what they read, I looked up different city ordinances around Washington, or just in Washington, ordinances and statutes that they had, and came up with a list of kind of consistent type things. This certainly isn't what Danielle Clevidence thinks we should do specifically. These are just some of the common things that I found in most of these. But I will say that I do think it's to note that we should definitely have some type of a meeting on this, whether it be an ordinance meeting or a consensus from our council to go forward on some changes. 2 specifically that I personally think that we should look at are, one, if I can find it, the being paid if you don't show up to one of the 2 regularly scheduled city council meetings. You just don't get paid. That's common along every one that I read. So I think that should be added to ours. And the other one is adding some type of, I have in here, because this is what I saw most, was like 8 out of 24 regularly scheduled meetings if somebody is absent, whether they're excused or not. But I think that it could be, we could change that to anything that we want, whether it's excused or not. Because all the RCW says is 3 unexcused consecutive. So that's 3 in a row that the council votes you unexcused. But that can, I mean, typically, if you count that, you would go to 1 meeting every 4 meetings and still be fine as long as the council is saying it's fine. There's an area for a leave of absence also that I read that I thought was pretty interesting, because if somebody cannot make it for whatever reasons, and we would typically say unexcused, then they could put in a leave of absence for it, like for an illness or something of that nature. Anyway, so if everyone could just kind of look over this, again, this is just to be brought up, because it's been brought up, like I said, about 3 or 4 different meetings in the last year and a half, and decided to do something about it. So.
Anybody have any comments?
I know you, Daniel, you put a lot of work into this, but then I don't know, I just feel that we could kind of keep a handle on this just the way it is, but I know where you're coming from, but then that's the way I look at it. It's just another meeting to get together, and so anyway, that's kind of way I feel. I've been on a lot of committees, and generally I've never seen where anyone's really been kicked off. And
We're elected officials, though.
well, that's what I'm
That's not the
referring.
committee part.
Well, that's what I'm referring to. And as far as being paid, I don't know, is that RCW? Is that?
No, I
That's
found
not-
it in all the
Okay.
ordinances from the
Okay.
other cities in Washington.
I guess when you call in, you are getting paid. You automatically get paid.
Yes, one of the things that I found too, though, is people say if you call in or are on the video, the Zoom, that if you're late, they say if you're not here for a certain percentage of the meeting, then that's considered an absence also. That, I think I put that one in here too, but again, I'm just telling you what other people have written. That's what these are. And we could make it however stringent or not stringent that we want, but I think that, like I said, you know my opinion on it. I think if you aren't here for the meetings, then you shouldn't get paid. And I think that there should be a certain amount, no matter whether you're excused or not excused, unless you're under a leave of absence of some sort. At some point, if you can't come to the meetings, because we have to repeat ourselves, and
You make it too stringent, you're gonna lose opportunity, people want to participate, which has been a challenge in the past. I mean, it's really easy for someone who's retired and no job and no kids at home to make it to every meeting, but when you're trying to juggle cross-country events and basketball practice and evening meetings for work, like, you're gonna have council members that have higher priorities, bigger priorities. Sometimes they're smaller, they may only be this big. But they're definitely, they're more important. So, you really start to push the point of, threshold of losing participation, so. And some, we have some council members that may bring more to one meeting than an entire month of meetings and committee meetings, et cetera. So I wonder, Mike, maybe what we're really looking at is a code of conduct, like if you're gonna come to the table, we don't want just a warm body, but you better participate, ask leading, not leading, but, critical questions and really have an impact rather than just being here. What's the value in that, right? So maybe we're talking more about a code of conduct for city council members rather than just an attendance.
I think that could definitely go in this. What I got most of this was from the specific council area. It's like 2 point something in our ordinances. Anyway, so that's where all of these kind of go, and all of the ones that I read and stuff like that also is in there. Also my big thing on the absenteeism is it makes us have to repeat ourselves a lot, when I think that that's taking up a lot more of our time than we probably need to do. When we're having to say, well, no, remember this was said, well, no, I don't, because you weren't there, things like that. And it gets
We
frustrating.
repeat ourselves for you when we are here, because we're human and we have more memories, and we've talked about a way to try and capture our emotions and have better minutes and be able to refer to a certain YouTube video so we can remember, but we repeat ourselves regardless for the folks that are already here, so.
Anybody else that hasn't? Yes, Steve.
Well, I agree with both Laura and Mylan, both of these people have brought up some very good elements that should be taken into consideration here. And I personally don't think it's been that big of a problem. I've been on council for almost 30 years, and it's not been that big a problem. And so, yeah, one more meeting is not what we need. to conduct this. But I appreciate your concern, for sure.
Mhm.
It's valid. I'm not saying that it isn't. But,
Andy,
I think I'm kind of in the middle on this. I do agree with Danielle and bringing points up that I think we all need to remember that we were elected into this position and we were supposed to show up to these meetings. Obviously, I know if you're sick or, you know, there is times where there's meetings, there is times where there's kid things and I get it, but I just feel that we all should remind ourselves that we were elected to represent our city and we need to be here. So.
anybody else that hasn't spoken yet? Fiona?
Yes, hi. I honestly think that we don't need any more. I agree with what Lauren said. We don't need any more scrutinization on good people that want to volunteer their time. You know, I'm not in here to be a politician. I don't know if any of the rest of you are. We're here to represent our community. I'm here as a normal person representing my community. I have no big, you know, plans of being AOC or something. You know what I mean? It's not like it when, like, I've been sweating like horribly this entire meeting. It's been rough for me. I'm really glad I'm not there trying to be in public feeling how I'm feeling right now. But I appreciate the chance that I get to still be here and still make, you know, my voice known. The people that come to me and want to tell me what is going on, what they think is going on with the city, and I can bring that to the council meetings, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that I can just be a normal citizen that volunteers my time to come to this. And, you know, I don't know what else you were looking up, Danielle, but if you look up the average salary for a city council member in Washington State is around $29,000 to $31,000 a year.
Not
I'm
for the
sorry,
small
but
ones.
we don't do that here.
Not for the small cities. I looked at those too.
Someone's pay. I mean, I can understand cutting someone's pay if they're not showing up, right? That's probably why those cities have those ordinances. I don't know what cities you were looking at or how big of cities
City
they
of
were.
Benton is one of the big ones that I got a lot of this stuff from, and that's a similar sized town.
So they don't get paid a salary. They get paid what we get paid.
Yeah, some people don't even get a salary.
I was gonna say it's so minimal that I don't think it would hurt any of us. Honestly, we're not doing it for the money. We're not in it for the money. I don't think.
No, we're not. I think it's more of a transparency thing, so that it doesn't appear that anything's for the money on that if you're not showing up for it. I see at least somebody shaking their head yes on that back here. But I mean, again, I just got some of the stuff that I found generalized in the different areas. Not all of these or any of them need to be done. I personally still think that if you don't show up, you should not get paid because we were elected, and that's being a good steward of the money of our city. I believe, having said that, you know, if you guys read through it, if you don't think it needs to go anywhere, then it doesn't go anywhere. But it's been brought up, and I'm not the only one that's brought it up. All of a sudden now I feel like I'm the lone person, but it's been brought up.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just want to, for the record, for the community, I just want to clarify that whatever, I don't know. Sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head what we get paid per meeting. It's set up per meeting, but I want the community to know that our work isn't just coming to this meeting. It is committee meeting, it is reviewing materials, it is, you know, we had a great ordinance committee meeting. I spent a bunch of time this weekend looking at, those ADU, rules and regulations around, like, the time spent in this meetings is a small percentage of our time.
I totally agree.
So I want to make sure that everyone, you know, is clear that it's not just show up to the meeting.
Yeah.
It's an hour. I remember during COVID once it was like 12 minutes or something, record meetings, recordly short meeting. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's, our time is a lot more and our commitment is a lot more than just these meetings. And I just want
Yeah.
to make sure that's clear.
Well, then you even got talking to the citizens. I mean, happens daily at work or when I'm at the store or, Facebook messages or text messages or phone calls, it's,
You could be any, I mean, it's a small
Yeah.
community, you could
Yeah,
be anywhere, and that 5 minute trip into the post office is 15 minutes and 20, and you had a great conversation about city business.
yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely agree. There also is areas that talks about if you don't show up to those and that if you can't show up to those, then should you be on those committees? That I found in one of the things as well and put in here. But yeah, obviously, I mean, I didn't do this on city council member time. I did this on my time. So I get how much we put into these. But it is also, I think, an issue.
Want to make sure anybody that hasn't gotten a chance to talk yet has an opportunity. Anybody that hasn't spoken yet? Or anybody would like any other comments or suggestions? Or if you guys had suggestions to move forward, this is the legislative branch's opportunity to police themselves and make your own rules for yourself, so we will go by whatever you guys suggest on moving forward with this matter. If anybody has.
Well, Mayor, if
suggestions to move
if
forward.
we want to, excuse me, if we want
Yeah.
to take it to the ordinance committee, we can talk about it there and really decide, if we want to go in more depth in this or not. Now, are we gonna have another ordinance meeting? When is the next one?
We don't have one scheduled right now.
Okay.
The last one we had, we talked about the ADU issue. Our building inspector was going to get some more information and get back to you about clearing a few things up on that, but we had an ordinance committee meeting last week and we don't have another one scheduled right now.
Yeah, well, anyway, just whatever, just.
But it's totally up to those committees or the council to suggest to move forward, or
I suggest at the very least, we have put in there that if you are not at the meeting, you don't get paid, because I saw that across the board and that's normal for city council
So we're even
staff.
saying even if someone's sick, they don't get paid?
If they're not at the meeting is what the majority said, or I can even read you what it said.
I think that's a little extreme myself.
Well, I
I mean,
mean,
just my opinion.
I'm just saying how it's read in here and
Yeah.
I don't, not,
I mean, I understand if it's not excused to not get paid. I could agree with that, but if someone's sick, I don't agree with not getting paid for it.
only 2 times a month.
Oh, yeah.
Reason,
I guess it all depends on how you want to look at that pay.
absolutely.
Currently we look at that pay of you get paid a certain amount per city council meeting. Or do you want to look at it, you get paid this much for being a city council member?
Well, there are 2 different ways, and I read that too. There's called a per diem and there's a salary. And so I don't know which one we fall under. I think that we fall under the per diem, which is per meeting.
I think it says per meeting.
Well, change it to salary.
Yeah, that's totally up to the council to,
At the same time, put it in a new light bulb.
yeah. If the council would like to discuss this any further or any more suggestions on moving forward, or if we wanna.
I think it should be taken to the ordinance committee to at least looked over and just
Put it
thought
on
about.
Put it on the
That's-
agenda for the next time the ordinance committee meets, we could put that on the agenda with, the ADU issue we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Okay,
I would go for that too.
refer to ordinance committee for next ordinance committee meeting. Okay, anybody else, like to chime in on the subject before we move on to the next item on the agenda? Okay, we'll put that on the next ordinance committee. Okay, the next item on the agenda, the critical areas update. So, last meeting, we had this critical areas issue. The council directed staff to do a little bit more research, which we did. The first 3 exhibits A, B, and C are the ones that you were presented with last time. The new one, exhibit D, is the latest one we got. How we got to that is we reached out to several cities and Clickitat County. We had last week, Sandy and myself had a meeting with the Clickitat County Planning Department about some issues we could work with them on. We reached out to Benjamin, they're working right now. So that was one of the recommendations we got, was to reach out to this company called Fawcett. Clickitat County has worked with them, Benjamin and White Salmon, both. And if you look at their, you can have a chance to look at their quote. It's Exhibit D. And, so that was the one that we would be recommending after talking to everybody, meeting with Clickitat County Planning Department last week. That was the one that looked the best to us. If you look on that very last page in the packet, it breaks down the cost. One of the big issues was the best available science. And this includes that, but it's just a best available science review and gaps analysis, which was substantially less expensive than the other quote that we got. The bottom line of this quote is the total cost is $20,509. As you might remember, we have a grant for $20,000 from the Department of Commerce for this critical areas ordinance, which would mean this would end up costing us $509. So we were, after meeting with the county planning department and the gentleman that gave us this quote,
Dan Nickel.
Dan Nickel from Fawcett, we were pretty happy with that. And so if you had a chance to look at that, or
Do we have another page of this? The motion doesn't seem to be on there, just.
This is just the consensus, because we still have to take it back to
Got
the
it.
council to
Gotcha.
approve a actual service agreement
yeah,
with whatever you guys decide. So we just need a consensus if you want to consent to one of those, or if you want us to do something else. And then there'll be a motion when the actual agreement is drawn up with
Okay.
that company.
we just wanted to make sure to let you know that we went through, the council had a bunch of suggestions that we did, and Sandy and myself, we went through all those options, contacted several different cities. I know Sandy contacted more than I did even, and we had a good meeting with Clickitat County Planning Department last week about it. One of the options was to adopt Clickitat County's critical areas ordinance by resolution. There was a few things that came up with that. Mainly theirs is being contested, so there's no guarantee theirs is gonna get done in the time frame that we're trying to work with to get ours done by. We have a certain amount of things we need to have done by 2026, and then the rest of it by 2027. So after talking to their planning department and the representative from Fawcett, this would be our recommendation for going forward with the critical areas, but more than happy to hear the council and get any suggestions or feedback or direction. Yes, Lauren.
That was one of the questions I had written down, is if we intend to adopt Clickitat County's critical area ordinance, but they're held up, are we negatively impacted? Are we still, can we just say, hey, or we adopt it and it just pens their resolution? Do we know?
Good question.
To Commerce.
Yeah.
When we had first asked her, and we asked her again, she said that we can't, until theirs is complete, we can't adopt it.
That's
It
it.
has to be totally complete and passed.
Yeah,
In order for us to adopt it, we can't adopt something that's in the middle of being contested.
yeah,
And that's what the Dan Nickel, because he's worked with other cities and he said the same thing.
yeah,
It has to be finalized before you can adopt it.
yeah.
I also just want to say that sometimes it's hard to sit around this table and ask hard questions and push more work on you guys. I really want to express my appreciation for you guys researching this, having those conversations, getting more quotes. So thank you.
Yeah, it really worked out from the best, and
It's awesome.
thanks to the city of Benjamin, the city administrator of Benjamin, because they're going through this right now and most helpful in working with us and giving us some time to see how they're doing and taking some recommendations from them. And then the Clickitat County Planning Department, we spent quite a bit of time last week, working with them and getting some recommendations and so, yeah, it was really helpful to.
You guys are doing a good one.
Thank
We
you.
did talk to Dan about the best available science report. And he said the other thing you can do is adopt by reference. So instead of doing the actual report, which he's already done through Clickatack County and he helped Benjamin with those, is we could say, well, we got this information from here and they did this report. So you can adopt by reference, which then saves us money of not having to do the whole big science report again that somebody else already did. So he said that's another way of
That was
adopting
where-
by reference.
That was where he lists here gaps analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I did reach out to Larry and ask him, he said that we never did the best available science report. We just did whatever the state guidelines were, is that what he could recall when we did it in 2020.
Yes, Steve.
By all indications, what's being presented here, along with all the legwork you guys have done, I would recommend going with Exhibit D, hands down. I mean, this whole thing seems kind of fluid anyway.
Yeah, we learned a lot.
I'll bet you, I'll bet you're still in the
More
dark
than
just a little
We're
bit.
still learning, but we know a lot more now than we did.
Figure it out. Lauren's got.
Yeah, Lawrence.
I agree with Steve this time.
Okay.
I do too.
Yep, yep.
So a consensus from all that Exhibit D will work for
Got
us and quote.
Ellie, if anybody else,
See 'em.
Theo?
Can't see her hand. There she
Can you
is.
see me now?
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I agree totally, hands down. Thank you guys so much.
Great. Well, that worked out good.
And just for clarification too, we have 10 minutes before we have to make a motion to extend the meeting.
Okay,
So just so you know, if we go past 2 hours, then we have to make a motion to extend.
okay.
Just not to push you.
No problem. We
Just
can
let
do
you
that.
know.
I think we can get done in 10 minutes, pretty good.
All right, well, does anybody else have anything they'd like to talk about the critical areas ordinance before we move on?
Just thank you, Lauren, for bringing it up and suggesting that they look further.
Yeah,
That helped a lot. It worked out.
Definitely, I'm gonna thank you to staff for, all the staff here, that they're doing great work.
Thank you, appreciate it. All right, well, we'll go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
No, I said staff and the mayor.
Oh, thanks, appreciate it. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda then. And that'll be report of officers. And let's start over here on this end with Mylan Walling.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I guess, I really don't have anything to comment, right now. I'm ending my, term here at the end of December and kind of looking forward to that, but I'm still gonna be missing the, being on the council and maybe in a couple of meetings, I'll make some recommendations I would like to see the council do in a later.
You stop by anytime.
Right,
The
right.
door's always open to you, Mylan.
Well, I appreciate it. Oh, it's good to see everybody else.
Your recommendations are always welcome.
Okay, I'll be making some.
Danielle,
I have nothing.
okay, Andy?
I just want to say tomorrow, everyone votes. I think it's important to vote. No matter what party you're with or what you're voting on, whatever, it's a responsibility that we have that I think is important. So get out there and vote.
Okay, Ellie,
Yeah, to kind of follow up with Andy on tomorrow being election day. There is on the Secretary of State's website a ballot return statistic, and we're only reporting at like 21% for Clickitat
sad.
County. That's an extremely low turnout.
I voted today.
Ever.
Okay. Anything else, Ellie?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you, Ellie. Lauren?
I don't usually do, went out trick or treating with Juniper, who was with me here earlier, and her mom on Halloween, and it was just really neat to see a lot of neighborhoods put out a big display and a lot of families out and kids out trick or treating, and I guess, it's really nice to serve this small rural community, so just a thank you to those people that did the Halloween displays and handed out candy.
Did you have to do any tricks?
No, I was not. No one asked me to do a trick.
Okay. Anything else, Lauren? I'm sorry. Okay, Theon, did you have a report?
Not so much a report. I guess I wanted to remind everybody, I did receive an email from the East Columbia Gorge area manager, Jill Sprance Carr, and she was wanting me to let everyone know that they will be doing a private filming at the Golden Dale Observatory for the movie, or it's a documentary called These Sacred Hills. It's about the Kanuqua and the Pushpum Mountain, everything that's going on with that. Anyway, if anybody's interested, they're playing it here in town, which is, they won, I'm pretty sure they won first place at the LA Film Festival or Documentary Festival. So
That'll
it's
be up
open.
at the observatory?
Yes, it's free to the public on the 13th.
Oh, okay.
And you just have to have, I mean, you want to get there at a decent time. Parking's kind of not so great. And you just have to make sure you have your pass, your, the park pass.
Discovery, yeah.
Yeah. So, that. And yes, everybody was so wonderful for Halloween. I was not feeling well, but my mom passed out candy and she had a lot of fun. And I tried to help a little bit, but I don't want to get anyone sick. So. All right.
Thanks, Theon. Steve Johnston.
I'm good, Your Honor.
All right, great. Well, I just had a couple things I had on my notes also to remind everybody Election Day tomorrow. That's been covered, but also I wanted to make sure to remind everybody that Veterans Day is next Tuesday, November 11th. So big thanks to all our local veterans and service. Wanted to make sure everybody knows that there'll be a Veterans Day parade on Tuesday, November 11th at 11 a.m. So come out if you're available, support our veterans. I know our police and fire department will be there, and I'll be in front of the old Masonic Lodge announcing, so stop by and say hi if you're around. And make sure to thank a veteran. We have several in the room, so thanks to all our veterans. And so we got that committee down. That's all I had. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, open public comment. Is there anybody that would like to make a public comment? No? Anybody on the line that would like to make a public comment? Anybody have their hands up there? No? Last chance? Okay, we'll close public comment. And is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adjournment. And if there's any discussion,
Well.
5 minutes to spare.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thanks. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We have 5 minutes to spare. Perfect. Good timing.
This is the longest meeting